Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Dev. Nalakesha, Nrsimha, 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 Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Dev. 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 Pranadesha, Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Dev. Nrsimha, Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Dev. Pranadesha, Jaya Nrsimha, one more time. Nrsimha, Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Jaya. Just one more time. Nrsimha, Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Dev. 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 Nrsimha, Jaya Nrsimha, Jaya Jaya Nrsimha Dev.
When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Oh. You feel a little protected? You feel a bit of a shield of armor now? Good. Keep it on, wear it home. Okay. So I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker has been practicing Krishna consciousness, practicing Bhakti yoga for many, many years, many decades in fact. Probably you could say he's been doing it his whole life. His main training in Krishna consciousness was in a very, very special temple, mandir, in Mumbai actually. Of all places to find spirituality in India. If you really want to find spirituality, believe it or not, go to Mumbai. In Mumbai there's a very, very, very special temple there. This temple for many years has been under the guidance and care of Radhanath Swami. Maybe some of you I know you've read his book, The Journey Home. So this is the temple where he is based, and he has a wonderful ashram there. There's many brahmacharis, monks, living in this ashram, And so Bhakti Rasamrita Swami was once one of those monks for many years. And then under the, by the request of his guru, Radhanath Swami, his spiritual master, he was asked to take up the service of travelling around to different places in the world and sharing the Bhakti Yoga teachings and philosophy, specifically the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the two main texts of the Bhakti Yoga tradition. So he's here to speak to us tonight, and the title, I was told, is The Spirit of Giving. Is that correct? Cool, The Spirit of Giving. My memory's okay. Okay, so let me welcome, with a warm welcome, His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami. You want to sit up here or just not? As you prefer.
Whichever. It's nice to get time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादां सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Good evening. And a happy evening. For me, it's such a change coming in from where I was a few minutes ago to here. We were in the traffic for almost 2 hours. And naturally, I was looking around at life and the atmosphere, the people all around, their activities, and one could deduce their aspirations in life, the things they obtained happiness in. It's always an educative experience to look around at the world. Having come here inside, it's like coming to a different universe, where you come into a place where people are looking for something beyond just being at the pub and drinking and doing whatever else they do there. The spirit of merrymaking is all that is left in festivals today, unfortunately. The spiritual essence has been lost. And what remains is the outer shell of merrymaking and enjoyment. So when time comes for Christmas, or for any other festival in any part of the world actually, the inner essence is forgotten. People take the externals alone, and that for them constitutes celebration of the festival. So increasingly we have a civilization that is getting devoid of its inner spiritual essence, and a lot of focus being placed on the externals, the glitter and glamour. And as I was coming down, you could see the glitter and the glamour everywhere. The glitz, that's what you call it. And everyone seems to be so mesmerized by this razzle-dazzle of the modern materialistic civilization. You could see through the beauty shops, the barber shops, everyone getting their particular kinds of haircuts and hairstyles, and the clothing, and just everything about life in general in the streets on these nights gives an indication of which way society is heading and which way the hearts of people and the minds of people are moving. We have a culture that is increasingly based upon enjoyment. A culture of taking. I want. These are the two most important words in life nowadays. I want. The whole consumerist civilization is just fueling this need. It's not a need actually. It's an unwanted thing, which by good advertising and just by a collective euphoria is ingrained into people as if it is something very essential for our life and which we can't be happy without. So we are encouraged by the modern civilization and the way it's moving to just take and take, because the kind of enjoyment we see outside here means that you just want to take. Where is the question of giving? When you want to give, then, ouch, that may hurt. So when I was told the topic that I have to speak on is the spirit of giving, I was thinking, yeah, many people when they hear this topic, they're going to say, oh, that hurts. Because instinctively we don't like to give. We only want to take. It's our natural instinct living in this world. You go into a shop and you're always looking for the best bargain. Meaning you want to pay the least amount of money and get the good for the highest value. If something's worth £10 and if you can pay £5 for it, that's a good bargain. So we're always looking at taking more than we receive, than we give. Of course, I'm not saying that we should unnecessarily go to all these shopping centers and just give a £100 note when we could do with £5. But I'm talking about the consciousness behind our activities today. And because there is so much emphasis on consumerism, and consumerism means trying to enjoy material goods, material events, and in general enjoy life in this world have an external conception of life. Nobody speaks about the inner journey of the soul. Nobody appreciates that there is another grade or another level of happiness, another universe that exists within. People are only able to relate to something that exists outside, and therefore they want to exploit it, they want to enjoy it. And that is equated with happiness. But it isn't so. The external enjoyment of this world doesn't constitute true happiness. True happiness is something else. True happiness is a characteristic, an integral part of our very spiritual essence, of our soul. It has nothing to do with wearing good clothes and looking beautiful, having good food, having a good car, and having a good perfume, or having a good party. This has nothing to do with happiness. It is just an external form of enjoyment, which then gives rise to its own karmic reactions. But when we talk of real happiness, then we are talking of something that is so sublime, so unique, that is hard for people to relate to, because they are so absorbed in the things of this world, because we are so used to just wanting to take and take. And when we have to give and give, then that becomes difficult. So ever wondered why people are breaking up so easily these days? Why are relationships breaking so easily? Why is the institution of marriage itself crumbling and people see no use for it? Because we're going to break up anyway. So why go through the trouble and then have all the trauma of breaking up and the legal problems involved and so on? Compare life now with 100 years ago. What kind of breakups do we have now? What was the rate we had 100 years ago, let's say? Why has it so drastically changed? Why is it changing more and more and more? Because there is an increasing emphasis every passing day on wanting to enjoy this world, on the external razzle-dazzle and the glitter and glamour of this world. And these days, leading up to the end of the year, are typical examples of what I'm speaking. It symptomizes the nature of modern thinking in the world. So the more that we emphasize on the externals, the more we emphasize on enjoyment of the external world as a source of happiness and success in life, and as the very reason for living, without which life seems to be meaningless, then the more we are actually encouraging the spirit of selfishness, of just wanting to take from this world without giving. And this mentality stays on and becomes part of our personality, so much so that when we relate to people, we are so keen on just what we want to take from the other person or persons, we no longer think that I also have a lot to sacrifice, I also have a lot to give in these relationships. Because consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, because I'm just keen on taking and I don't want to make the sacrifice, I don't want to take the trouble of giving, so relationships break down very easily because the other people are also thinking similarly. If humanity has to be sane, if the society has to be stable, if our relationships have to be warm and friendly and loving and trusting, and if we have to be internally happy, then we must have good relationships with people. And also, the spirit of giving has to be cultivated. Without that, it is not possible. As a general principle, if we make it a point to always give more than we receive. And if everyone thinks like that, this world will be the spiritual world. This world will become actually heaven, a spiritual heaven. But to the degree that we do not wish to give, we do not wish to sacrifice, we do not wish to share, and to the degree we want things for ourselves, including our independence, then we find these problems emerging. Somebody said, I remember hearing many years ago, I thought it was a good one. He said, God gives and gives to us. God gives and gives and gives. And then He forgives also, because we make blunders all the time. We take what He gives and we make blunders. So God gives and gives and gives and forgives and forgives and forgives. And we get and get and get and forget and forget and forget. So we become ungrateful towards everybody in life. So we've received so many things from so many people from the very time of our birth and even before. So the spirit of gratitude means that I must be willing to give them more than I've received. If we were actually to make an analysis of our life and to study the people and the factors that are responsible for making us what we are today, we will be astounded. Such a wide variety of people have had a role in shaping us to what we are today. And because others have sacrificed for us, we have gained. If we do not sacrifice for others, then how will the world go on? And what kind of population are we going to have in the future? So therefore, this question of getting and forgetting is not something that is a very admirable human trait. First of all, we get because we can't live without getting. All of us have to receive. Practically all day long, we're also receiving things from a variety of sources. So receiving or taking or getting is not necessarily bad, because it's necessary for our survival. But the question is, what kind of things do we want to take? And what do we do with what we get? And how do we relate to those who give these things to us? What do we aspire to get? These are the important questions. If we only aspire to get things which pertain to the external world, even over and above what is necessary for decent, healthy survival, then we move in one direction. However, those who are serious on the path of yoga, and by yoga I mean a path of connecting to your spiritual essence. I don't mean a very limited understanding of the word yoga as is commonly understood today as being exercises of various kinds. That's just one very, very tiny part of one type of yoga. In general, the word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means to connect. The connection of our spiritual essence, which is the soul, to the source of everything, the Supreme Soul, we call Him God, we call Him Krishna, is yoga. So yoga is the process of reconnecting ourselves with God on the spiritual platform, not on the material platform. We could even try to connect with God on the material platform, and that's what most people who are followers of some of the other religion do. They would go to a temple or a mosque or a church or a synagogue or some other place of worship, and very often they ask God for something material. About some food, their career, their job, their money, their health, or something material. But a genuine yogi is not so concerned about asking God for anything material. The yogi is concerned primarily with his or her spiritual development. And in pursuance of that goal, the yogi tries to live a very simple life, shorn of unnecessary trappings of this consumerist civilization. So the yogi tries to make do with the bare minimum of what's needed in life. If I really don't need something, why should I buy it? So the one thing we keep in mind is that every time we want to buy something, we need to question ourselves, do I really need this? And if we're still doubtful, then we can ask, do I really need this? Still in doubt, do I really need this? And I think by the time you get your answer. And if it's still a yes, then all right, go ahead. It might still be the wrong thing, but all right, go ahead. At least you've done a bit of checking. So in any case, as we proceed on this path, we realize that I should be taking less and less, and I should be giving more and more to the world. I have gained so much from this world. Now let me give something to the world. Of course, there are many people who give a lot to the world, but it's trouble. So we don't want to give trouble to the world. We want to give the right thing. So we want to give the right thing to the world, and we want to receive the right thing also. And if everyone thinks that I want to give more of the right thing than I receive, then such a wonderful place this world will be. A great saint in India once said a very beautiful thing which I want to share with you, and it relates quite well to the topic of the day. He said there are always two things in life that you should forget. And there are two things in life you should always remember. What are the two things in life you should always forget? Number one, you should forget the harm that someone has done to you. And you should always forget the good that you have done for others. And what are the two things you should always remember? We should always remember the harm I have done to somebody else. And I should always remember the good somebody has done to me. Is that too confusing? Shall I say it again?
Please.
Okay, I'll say it again. A little differently. There are always two things we should remember and always two things we should forget. Let's consider forget. The two things we should always forget are, number one, the good I have done to others, what I have given to others. Generally, the tendency is we never cease reminding others of what we've done for them. Isn't it? That's a human tendency. Even 20 years later, we remind, yes, remember, I did this for you. And we want that person to be obliged to us for a long, long time for some little thing we may have done for that person. But when you give to somebody, something good, I mean, then you should forget about it the moment you've given it. And when you give somebody something bad, in other words, you've done some harm to that person, that's another thing. Then you should always remember that. On the other hand, if somebody else has given you something that's good and that's right, you should always remember it. And if he or she happens to have given you something that's not good, forget about it. Don't pay attention to it. That's between that person and the powers of the universe. It's not my problem. It's that person's problem. Just see the difference in the way of thinking. When people do good to us, we tend to forget about it. And when we do good to others, we always tend to remember it. We tend to do exactly the opposite. But a culture of respect, a culture of love, a culture of happiness is possible only when we give, and we give a lot. The greatest positive changes in life in this world have always been possible by exemplary people, exceptional people who have given themselves up for the world. And this we find in the saintly people of all religions, cutting across cultures and religious faiths and locations across the world. Because these are saintly characteristics. I mentioned earlier about how God gives and forgives. So if people become genuinely godly, not just externally in terms of identifying with a particular religious faith and saying, I'm this and I'm that, and then committing, things that are not appropriate. But if one actually becomes spiritual and devout, then one can also become godly. And one can also then give and forgive and experience the joy of giving and the joy of forgiving. Not being able to give is a pain, even though we may think it's a joy. And not being able to forgive is torture. If you bear a grudge against somebody because that person did something wrong to you, and you haven't been able to forgive that person, you are tortured all your life. The other person probably has forgotten about the whole thing and moves on happily in life. But because you haven't forgiven him and forgotten that, so therefore that harasses the mind, no end. So when we become more spiritual, when we delve deeper into the self, then automatically the give and forgive syndrome becomes a cause of joy and happiness to us. And then it becomes natural. And we like to do it. We like to give to others. We like to forgive. Imagine a world where everybody likes to give and also is very eager to forgive. On the other hand, when you take and forget, you get and forget, you get. So this I want syndrome. And then you forget, because by then another model of your iPhone or whatever has come out. So you want that. And then another, and another, and another. And that's how life moves on in this world. A poet and author, I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson, he said, it was a very good point. He said, you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. Shall I say that again?
Yes, please.
Okay. He said, you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. Meaning, you can give different things to different people. You may even give gifts, and apparently it's a gift of love, but you don't have that love in your heart. You're just doing it for whatever reason. Maybe it's diplomatically the correct thing to do, or socially the right thing to do. Maybe you hate the person, but you just have to do it because that's the thing to do. So you can give something to somebody and not have even an ounce of love in your heart for that person. But if you love somebody genuinely, then you will not be able to love that person without giving something. And not just giving some material good, like money or some physical gift, but giving yourself, your heart, your spirit, your consciousness. In other words, what he said actually is quite profound. What he said is that if you love somebody, if you love everybody, in short, then you can give to everybody. So when we talk about the spirit of giving, it means we're talking about the spirit of living, the spirit of loving, I beg your pardon. Because when you love everybody, then you can give to everybody. it is only then that the spirit of giving will actually awaken in a meaningful way. But this loving everybody is not something that is so casual. Just like a music star may come on the stage and say to everybody, I love you all, that's not what we're talking about. That is not the love, that we want for people. We're talking of love that is not just on the platform of the body. Love that is much deeper. Love that is spiritual. Love that connects the soul to the super soul, to Krishna, to God, whatever you may identify that super soul with. So when one actually becomes a genuine lover of God, when one actually becomes self-realized, and one gets that love of God, that itself is the best gift we are giving to everybody. And when we share that, then we are actually giving the most meaningful thing in the world to everyone. And then our love of God and our spirituality increases to the degree that we give and give and give. Because, as the Bible says, it is in giving that you receive. Another devotee was just saying the other day that, when you have a lot, it means that God has given you many things. And you're receiving it with both your hands. There's a shower of things that God's giving you. It's coming. And if you just hold it like this and don't share it, then the flow stops, But if your palms are extended and the shower comes in and then you give it to share it with everybody, because it's not only for you, you share it. Then the flow doesn't stop, it increases. So human life is meant for sharing. The Vedic philosophy is called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. In Sanskrit, this means that the whole earth is one family. Just as in one family, the little children, the grown-ups, the grandparents, everyone lives together happily. It's all one home. We share everything. The joys and sorrows are shared. Whatever we get in the house is shared. So similarly, the whole world is considered to be one family. And that kind of scenario is possible only when this consciousness is developed, that spiritual consciousness. And this spiritual consciousness transcends all the parochial divisions of caste, creed, community, nationality, religious faith, or any other bodily designation. Because the soul doesn't have any bodily designation. The soul is not English or Japanese or American or African. Neither is God for that matter. God is not Hindu or Muslim or Christian or anything else. So what we are talking about are entities that transcend material designations. When our thinking expands to that level and we work inwards towards developing that relationship, the process of yoga, Bhakti yoga, the relationship of love. Bhakti means love. Then we develop that loving relationship to God, to Krishna, the all-attractive Supreme Person. By loving that one all-loving God, we automatically develop love for everyone else. If we do not develop love for that one Supreme Entity, it is very hard for us to love everybody. We will love someone, but we will hate someone else. But if you truly want to love everybody, without discrimination, even your so-called enemy, even if someone considers you an enemy, but you don't consider that person an enemy, you love that person too. Imagine a state of consciousness like that. It's not a fairy tale. These things are possible. And great saintly persons across various cultures have demonstrated this in their life. So by taking to this practice of Bhakti Yoga, the process of reviving love for the Supreme Person, all-attractive person, we can actually perfect the art of giving, because we would have developed love, true love. And in this process of giving and giving, our happiness would also increase and increase. That's, in a sense, the story of the spirit of giving. Thank you very much. Your time is up. I think I have to leave a few more minutes for questions, I suppose. So thank you for your kind attention. If you have any questions, please do feel free to ask, and I will try to answer them. Yes?
I wish I'd fully formed the question in my head, but I'll just try and speak it. But what's your advice for people who have money troubles, and so if someone has money troubles, how do you continue living with love and giving without being too distracted by the troubles?
Okay. So your question is that if someone has money troubles, how can that person continue in the spirit of giving without being too distracted by one's own troubles?
Yeah.
Right? Actually, you know, poverty is the best time to give, because then you really know what giving means. When you're rich, you give, but you don't give that much. It doesn't. Giving means you give till it pinches. But a rich person doesn't understand or experience that pinch. The rich person may give because there's a feel-good factor. I've done something for the poor kids, I've done something for this or that, but they don't really get the happiness of giving. Someone who doesn't have much and still shares little of what he or she has actually experiences something higher. Number one. That doesn't mean, however, that I do not empathize with the situation of the person who's having a hard time. Naturally, the person needs to do what is necessary to survive in this world. It means working in a job or whatever it is. At the same time, I might want to point out here that some of the problems are also self-inflicted, in the sense that we need to ask ourselves the question, am I aspiring to live a life that has more requirements than I need to have, which is why I need more money than I have at the moment? But the questions of us needing money often arise because we want and we aspire for things which we do not have at the moment and which cost a lot of money in the outside world. And we see what people have outside and we think, well, if this one has that, then I also want this, and then that one has this, and I also want that. So is it because of that our requirement for money goes up? Could we have done with a simpler life and still been happy? Not that we deprive ourselves of the basic necessities. You need your heating in a house, you need food and clothing and so on. But what kind of clothing? What kind of housing? What kind of car? So if we simplify our life a little bit, then I think to a large degree, this problem will also be solved. And in conclusion, yes, whatever is then possible for a person who gives in a not so wealthy condition is appreciated. The person who's giving appreciates it, feels the satisfaction truly of having done something in spite of not having a lot, and the person who receives also feels that. It's appreciated more. Did I answer your question somewhat?
A lot.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for such a nice address.
Sorry, I'm just covering the light so I can see who's asking. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, say there is a little taste for giving something, then what to do with the mind or intelligence, whatever is there, that every time I give, I calculate what I will receive.
Say that again, every time I give?
Every time I give, there is this little calculation going on of, how it would work out for me best in the long term. So how to give without expecting and without calculating something for yourself.
Okay, so your question is that when I give, how do I stop the process of calculation of what it's going to mean for me after I give? In terms of, let's say I give some money, right, and then I have only so much left, and will I be able to manage? Right? That kind of thing is your question?
Yeah, and on a more subtle level as well. As if like you invest in the relationship, but you're expecting, or as if like you remember, then you want to...
Alright, of course. In this world, we don't blindly do anything. We always use our intelligence. But if you only use intelligence and no heart, what's life? We're like a computer. No difference between us and the latest laptop. At the same time, if you just heart, you just do things without thinking, then you'll end up in trouble, really. So we need a blend of the head and the heart. So when you want to give, yes, you give till it pinches a little bit, but you ensure that your leg is not chopped off. You shoe may pinch, but it shouldn't get your leg chopped off. In other words, you also use your intelligence to see that you're able to manage and it doesn't recoil on you in a way that you can't give more later. So whether it's giving physical things, whether it's giving money, or whether it's giving of yourself in a relationship, these things are to be done step by step with proper understanding, with due consideration, and a blend and a balance of the heart and the head. And with knowledge, the knowledge of yoga, spiritual knowledge. And that's why it's so important for us to read and understand and hear. That will help us to make informed decisions in life. Okay? All right, do we have time for one last question? Yeah. Sorry, somebody else is here? Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you for giving us your time tonight. That's a great gift in its own, and for sharing your wisdom with us. I think when we speak about gifts, a lot of us are thinking about material gifts. And I was wondering if you can give us examples of other ways of giving that don't require money or material sacrifice, but it still means a lot of.
Okay, thank you. So your question is that when we talk of giving or gifting to others, can we have some examples of gifts that are not monetary in nature? Actually, monetary gifts are probably in the lowest category of gifts and giving, but we consider that the highest. By we, I mean in general in the world. The highest gift is the most priceless thing. That's love of God. That's Bhakti. Bhakti yoga is a process to attain Bhakti. Bhakti means love, love of God. So when you gift that or give that Bhakti to someone, that love to somebody, you're giving that somebody the highest gift anyone can possibly give anybody. So that's the highest. And all the way from there, way down to just ordinary gifts. It all spans the spectrum. Of course, monetary gifts are not entirely meaningless. It all depends on the consciousness with which we offer them. Even simple things, as I was mentioning, you may give a gift to somebody you hate, but because you're supposed to do it for some social purpose or an official purpose, you just do it, giving a flower, for example. You give a flower to somebody because you're supposed to do it. On the other hand, somebody else may give the same flower to another person out of genuine feeling. So there's a lot of difference there, but the gift is the same externally. But the consciousness that goes behind it is important. Similarly, money. If behind that gift of money there is a consciousness that I want to be known as a very charitable person, I want to become famous as a person who is really big-hearted, and that's the way I can be famous in this world, that's one type of consciousness. And the money I want to give for some spiritual purpose, and not for credit for myself, but to genuinely help others get the best thing in life. That's another thing. So the objects of this world can also be used as vehicles to communicate our feelings and our consciousness. So when we say we give love of Godhead, it means that we give everything connected to that. We give knowledge connected to that. We make facilities available for that, and so on and so forth. So these are different acts of sacrifice and love that we can share, and these will be the best gifts that we can give to people. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. And there was another question here, yes.
I think it's related. Something like if you're trying not to conform to the consumerism of society, but you want to give to other people, and they like receiving, I don't know, like trivial things. I don't know, how do you kind of go about doing that? I want to make them happy, but I don't really, the thing I'm buying is, it doesn't make me happy, like buying all these consumables and stuff, so yeah. Do you understand the question?
You mean that you have some nice relationships with people and they may or may not be so spiritually inclined, and they may expect trivial gifts from you, which are, say somebody wants an iPhone from you, or somebody wants some other little object from you, or something like that. Well, all right, not a problem. However, if you can give a gift that that person can use for his or her spiritual development, that's even better. So try to work it out in such a way that that thing will help that person in this way. And if the person wants to use it for a job or studies or whatever it is, they can do that as well. Also, perhaps by giving that, if your relationship deepens to a degree where the person is influenced by your spiritual way of thinking, then maybe the person will also step forward and try to become spiritual. So in a sense that even these trivial gifts can be meaningful. You see, in this world, most things are neutral. They become meaningful, they become positive or negative depending on the purpose for which they are used, and also the consciousness behind the offering. Right? So you can use an apparently trivial gift for a divine purpose. Just like we're using a microphone here for a spiritual purpose. We just step out and similar things are being used for entirely different purposes. Right? Okay? Alright, so should we stop here then? Alright, yeah? Should we stop? I can go on all night, but I think we should. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for coming and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. Please come back again.
I will.
We know you don't celebrate Christmas, but we wish you a very Merry Christmas.
No, I do. I do celebrate, but not like they do.
Great. This is my favorite mantra. You might have heard us sing it before. Actually, the essential meaning of this mantra, you're asking. When you sing this mantra, you're asking the divine to reawaken in your heart the spirit of giving. So if you like, when you're singing this mantra, you can have that there. You can have that there in your consciousness. You can be asking the divine to reawaken your spirit of giving. Before I start, I'd like to introduce all the musicians. On Mridanga drum, Krishna Lila. On backing vocals, Ranga Devi. Bass guitar, Colin Campbell, we call our kirtan by Mandali. Mandali means a circle of people. That's all of us, including you, gathered together